Good morning, FHS. We've got a wonderful show for you today. I'm Michael Kopias.
And I'm Trent Galzinski. Starting off with coverage of local business, Aesop's Treasury, Mrs. Cleavy's teaching classes,
Mr. Johnson's PLTW classes, and the annual Jelly Bean Festival.
All this and more on BKTV Live. Our first segment goes over Aesop's Treasury.
What's Aesop's Treasury?
Well, it's a local board game and bookstore that's been in the Farmington area for 5 years and plans to stay for far longer.
Well, what does Aesop's have?
Aesop's has one of the biggest collections of RPGs and board games in the state. Check it out.
Playing board and tabletop games have recently become an increasingly popular pastime. However, it can be hard to find a good place to play at, and these games can be expensive. Aesop's Treasury is a perfect answer for both these problems.
Aesop's Treasury is a new and used book and game store. We carry new books, we carry used books. We carry board games, role-playing games, cards, dice. We don't carry any electronics or computer games. It's all about us putting our phones down and enjoying each other's company. We've been here about 5 years now, and we just re-signed a lease for another 5 years, so Farmington stuck with us for at least a decade. You can find a wide variety of role-playing games. Aesop's Treasury has the state's largest selection of role-playing games. We have a very large selection of board games, probably the largest selection of board games between St. Louis and Memphis. Miniatures, hobby supplies, paints, primers, glues, brushes, anything for skirmish games such as Age of Sigmar or Warhammer. We have a small community that plays X-Wing and Legion. Anything that doesn't require batteries. We've got a game room over here with about 8 tables. It'll hold about 35 people. We've got skirmish tables for the folks to play their Warhammer, Age of Sigmar. We've got 7 tables for playing board games and or role-playing games. We've actually got a board game library of about 100 board games. They're free to play in the store, and many of them have pricing if you want to rent the game and take it home for the evening. Aesop's Treasury is in the lower level of the factory here in Farmington, Missouri. We're open 7 days a week, 9 to 9.
Man, I'll have to check out Aesop's later.
I'll go with you. We'll have to try out one of those board games for ourselves.
As you might have noticed, over the last month, we had a few segments about some of our high school classes. This was because February is CTE month, or Career and Technical Education month. We wanted to help shed light on some of our CTE programs at the high school.
The next 2 segments today highlight most of our CTE programs at Farmington. We have a playlist of most of FHS's CTE programs linked in the description.
Mr. Johnson is
Next
one
up,
of
we
the
have Haley and
PLTW teachers here at Farmington High School. He explains the many reasons why students should be a part of the program.
Project Lead the Way classes are, we focus mainly on engineering and computer science. So students pick problems that they can solve using engineering and computer science. So that's really the difference between us and some of the other career and tech classes, is that, you know, we let kids pick problems, but they use engineering and engineering skills to solve those problems. We start with some common projects that everybody will work through to learn skills, and then they get to choose some of their own projects and kind of do some things that they're interested in and get some investment into because it's important to them. So there's a lot of student-led projects that they'll choose and go through the process. And my job is kind of just to guide them as they go through their work. Typically, once we get through kind of the introductory part of it, it's a lot of students are pacing on their own and working on different parts of a project. So I may have groups of kids at different places all working towards their goal, but they're all at different spots in that process. So every kid is kind of, you know, working on different things, but they're all kind of working in the same direction.
Reporting for BKTV, this has been Akasha Wiesmeyer and Haley Williams.
You can talk to your school counselor or select the engineering programs on your schedule.
Moving into our real-world news segment called Stuff That Matters, starting with changes coming to the free application or federal student aid, or the FAFSA, for the next school year. The FAFSA, if you didn't know, is the application to determine your eligibility for federal student aid. The Department of Education is making the application simpler and more streamlined, hopefully making it easier for students going into college.
Our next story concerns a shooting that occurred earlier this week in Kansas City. Ralph Yarl, a 16-year-old boy, was sent to pick up his younger siblings from a home. He arrived at the wrong address and rang the doorbell. He was met by the homeowner, Andrew Lester, who shot Ralph twice, once in the head and another in the arm. It is important to note that according to police reports, Ralph did not enter the home, nor did he attack the homeowner. The prosecuting attorney from Kansas City said in a statement, there may be a racial component to the case. Ralph Yarl, the boy who was shot, is doing well and expected to recover. Lester, the shooter, is in jail for felony assault and armed criminal action.
Our next story hails from the state of Oklahoma, where earlier this week, after a regular meeting of the county commission in McCurtain County, the commissioners and other officials were caught on audio recording reminiscing about how you can no longer lynch people of color and talking about murdering a journalist in the county. Since the statements became public, the governor and protesters in the county have called for the resignation of all officials involved. One of the county commissioners has resigned.
Our final story is a bit of an interesting one. On Tuesday, a toddler who was visiting Washington, D.C. with his parents crawled past security at the White House and made it onto the front lawn. The toddler was quickly discovered by Secret Service and was removed from the White House and reunited with his parents. The Secret Service said in a statement that the officers, quote, encountered a curious young visitor along the White House north fence line who briefly entered the White House grounds.
Now moving back into our segments.
Most of our past CTE classes have covered hands-on topics like food and engineering. But what if I want to try to help the next few generations?
Well, one way you can do that is by going to teaching. Shania and Camry talk with Mrs. Clevey about her teaching classes.
Beginning teaching strives to educate students that have interest in participating in the education field, whether you want to teach elementary school or even high school.
I really loved history, and I knew that I wanted to be a teacher since I was very young, so I thought I would be able to put my love of history with, teaching kids history. I think that I really focus on how important relationships are. When we talk in our classes about becoming teachers, we talk about getting to know kids and developing relationships with kids, and I really focus on that and how important it is. And once we talk about that, usually people that want to become teachers, I've noticed, they always can tell me their favorite teacher and the relationship they have. They can always kind of explain that. So once they start to see why that's so important, they can reflect back on their favorite teachers and relationships that they've had with teachers as well. So people think when they become a teacher that they get to go home at 3 and not have to worry about their job, and they get to not worry about their job on the weekends, and they get to not worry about their job during the summer, and that is totally false. My motto would be just no regrets. Doing what you want to do when you want to do it and not looking back on the fact that you didn't. And I think when you're young, you really need to take advantage of the time that you have before you get married and have children and go to school for real, college for real, right? Or go into the workplace for real. Just taking advantage of being young, and if you want to travel, go do it, and not regretting that you didn't take advantage of that.
Beginning teaching taught by Miss Clevey is a great first step to your career out of high school.
I'm so glad Farmington has a program to help students start down the road to becoming future educators. Programs like these are so much more important today, and with the current teacher shortage, encouraging students into the profession is a noble task.
In this next segment, we discuss the Jelly Bean Festival. Dayton Kennan, Libya Bell, and Hayden Melton take us inside to learn more about this event.
The Jelly Bean Festival is a talent show produced by special education students to show off their many talents and abilities.
The Jelly Bean Festival is an amazing event for students with special needs to show off their talents in front of an audience of their peers. Reese Beckett and Anna Sykes played big roles in the Jelly Bean Festival.
So as the Theater Guild Vice President, you'll see the other Vice President is out there, our President is out there. We've got a lot of our officers here today, so we kind of jumped in to help.
I've assisted with Jelly Bean Festival. I assisted my freshman year. 2020, I'm not certain if we had it or if I just wasn't available, but I assisted with like being a buddy and all of that freshman year. And then these past 2 years, I've been able to be MC and like host and announce everything. So that's been really enjoyable. That's sort of been the extent of my involvement. Every time that I've been here, I'm just always so overwhelmed with how into it everybody gets. And this is just such a wonderful opportunity for these students to showcase some stuff that they wouldn't otherwise be able to show to everybody on stage. This is, I feel like, especially me personally, and other high school students, we're presented with like lots of opportunities to showcase our abilities and to be recognized for that and to show our peers something that we're working on or some talent that we'd like to display. But this sort of extends that opportunity and broadens the horizon and allows those students to show them those things and receive the feedback for it, and everybody's clapping. They've got their phones and their flashlights turned on. I just think it's really, really special. And I haven't seen any other thing quite like Jelly Bean Festival, and I know so many of my friends really, really look forward to it. They're always like, oh, Jelly Bean Festival's today? Okay, I'm telling all my teachers we have to come. So I just really appreciate that. I think it's really, really important.
Miss Lowry was the one responsible for running the show.
Well, this year I took over the Jelly Bean Festival. We lost Miss Mays Nielsen back in January, and I took over for her. So I'm kind of the stage part of everything, making sure that the students get on and off stage. Really, I kind of run all the other theater kids around. I first learned about the Jelly Bean Festival actually well before I worked here. I happened to actually do my field experience here and happened to be able to see the Jelly Bean Festival, and the first time I saw it, I was like, this is the neatest thing. This is just absolutely amazing. Mrs. Callahan and Mrs. Birch, Miss Callahan did so very, very much, and Mrs. Birch, they're just wonderful, and really they did the majority of the work.
Thanks, guys. If you're interested in being a buddy or even participating next year, speak to Miss Callahan or Miss Lowry.
Well, that's all we have for today's show.
Wait. If you haven't already, be sure to see The Little Mermaid at Central High School, being produced by CHS Theater Troupe and Farmington's Theater Guild. Shows are at 7 p.m. tonight, 7 p.m. tomorrow, and 2 p.m. on Saturday. I've heard it's a pretty great show.
And we can't forget that next Wednesday at 5:30, Incubator will be hosting their final pitch, where each group competes to try to earn $2,000 for their businesses at Truman Auditorium. To find out more about each group, check out the link in the description for a playlist covering all the groups this year. But for now, this has been Trent Galzinski
and Michael Kopias on
BKTV Live.